Welcome back, boys and girls. Today we're going to learn the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so I was looking around to see if I had a pen, and I cannot stand writing in books. Okay, I do like dog earing pages, which I know a lot of people don't like, but I prefer that to writing in a book. But I'm going to get over that, right? Because then what I want to do is go through and find all the things that I don't understand in this, find all the words that I don't understand to try to make sure that I can understand it properly and that I can teach you what it says because it's significant, right? Does everybody know what this is? Everybody knows what it is. They know of it, but they do not know what it contains. And I don't even know if you feel like you have the freedom to do anything about it, right? It's so I want to read it, okay? And I read it previously on my other channel, but my audio and my visual were out of sync on the video that I created. And then it fixed itself later on. So I want to read it. Hopefully it'll work properly this time. But when I was reading it previously, that was like the first time that I ever recall reading it. Okay. So I don't want you to think that I'm a scholar in this and that I have any clue of what it says, but I have read through it once. So hopefully it'll be slightly smoother than the first time that I read through it. So let's read through the preface. To encourage people everywhere to better understand and appreciate the principles of government that are set forth in America's founding documents, the Cato Institute is pleased to publish this pocket edition of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America. This preface has been prepared by Roger Pilon, founding director of Cato's Robert A. Levy Center for Constitutional Studies. For more information about the Cato Institute, please see the end of this publication. In 1776, America's founders gathered in Philadelphia to draft the Declaration of Independence, which dissolved the political ties that had bound the American people to Great Britain. A new nation was thus born, free and independent, the United States of America. 11 years later, in 1787, after American patriots had won our independence on the battlefield, many of the men who had met earlier in Philadelphia, plus others, met there again to draft a plan for governing the new nation, the Constitution of the United States. Can you just imagine? Can you imagine what that was like in 1776? It's like they got their independence, but they didn't write the rule book for it until 10 years later, is 11 years later. Okay. So 11 years, just imagine what 11 years of your life is like. It's like we see these things as just the symbol of what they are, but we don't think about what it was like to go through those first 11 years or even what came before that. Okay. So the reason for me reading this is to not just have it as a symbol anymore, but for you to take it, hear it, think about it, and then contemplate it. Okay, that's what meditation really is. Everybody wants to get better at meditating. Meditating is just sort of focusing your attention on nothing, but you can also do it through focusing your attention on something, and that is contemplation. Okay, that's what philosophers were doing. I really think that that's what philosophers were. They were meditators, and they're trying to see something greater in the symbolism around them. All right, so I'll stop and have these interjections because I want you to take time for it to settle in. This is something that like women kind of are always in this space of their mind, right? So if a man makes a certain face or does a certain thing, or, I think women see patterns in people, especially their children. And I think that we're made to be this way because we're supposed to use our intuition to sense when things are wrong, because women are supposed to have a greater capacity for acceptance and staying in their loving energy instead of just like popping off in anger. Okay. Women are supposed to be better at this. We're wired for it. Our brains are wired for it more so than men. Now, I'm just speaking in general terms. Okay. But what I'm saying is that like, this is what creates a lot of problems with people, is that if they see their man say a certain thing or do a certain facial expression, then the woman is like, what's up with that? Like, what are you feeling? And they start getting all in their feelings and getting nervous. It's because their intuition sees more than just what's in the obvious thing. It's like you can tell somebody's face is angry. That is a symbol for something that's going on that only the person can know what that is. And even sometimes, even if it's our own feelings, we still don't really know where they come from. Okay. So I want you to understand that men are so good at speaking if you give them time to think about it. I don't know where I heard it, but somebody once said that if you ask a man a question, or if you want a man to speak, ask him a question and wait 30 seconds, because they will hesitate to speak. So the women will just speak over top because they think if the man is not responding right away, then what she said didn't matter to him. But really, what's happening is that the woman is not respecting how a man processes thoughts. Okay. So when you give him this information, he needs to take time to process it, think about it, and then think about what he wants to speak upon it. And this is a process. This is not just like you're going to do it once and it's going to work perfectly. It's like you have to learn communication, how it works best between different people. Okay. So what I want you to do is give time for contemplation, because your ego is going to hear a word and it's just going to pounce on that word with a like, I don't like that, right? Take time to think about why you don't like it. Let me move on because we haven't started it yet. Okay. Um, in 1789, after the plan had been ratified, the new government was established. Together, the Declaration and the Constitution are America's founding documents. Okay, so 1776 was when America gained its independence from Great Britain. 1787 was when this was written, and then 1789 the plan was ratified, right? And the government was established. So it still took another 2 years, all right? So I know that we are going through crazy times right now. Can you just imagine, like, that was a 2-year process? That was like in total, that was a 13-year process, right? So you need to understand that change takes time. And by the time it usually solidifies into the earth, because it starts out as an idea and then it becomes a part of our environment. But by the time it becomes a part of our environment, we've already moved past it, right? So then it's like irrelevant for the moment that we're in. It was relevant to back when where we had started the idea. So I want you to understand that, like, when things finally settle in and ground in, it's like we're already in need of something else. Okay? All right. As amended over the years, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, the nation's fundamental law, but the broad language of the Constitution is illuminated by the principles set forth in the Declaration. To better understand and appreciate the form of government we have, therefore, it is important to look first to the Declaration, where the founders outlined their moral vision and the government it implied. Addressing a candid world, the founders' immediate aim in the Declaration was to justify their decision to declare independence. A candid world means that, like, everybody was paying attention at that time, right? Because they were looking for guidance and direction in this new world that they had just formed. Toward that Toward that end, they set forth a theory of legitimate government, and then demonstrated how far British rule had strayed from that idea. Okay. So they were saying what government should be like, and then they were comparing it to the British government to say, this is why we don't want to be part of that country anymore. We want our independence because what they're doing there is not what's best for the people, and we're trying to create something new. All right. But their argument served not simply to discredit British rule. In addition, it set the course for future American government. Indeed, for more than 2 centuries, the ringing phrases of the Declaration have inspired countless millions around the world. Appealing to all mankind, the Declaration's seminal passage opens with perhaps the most important line in the document. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Grounded in reason, self-evident truths invoke the long tradition of natural law. Self-evident truths mean that it's like they're obvious, okay? Which holds that there is a higher law of right and wrong from which to derive human law and against which to criticize that law at any time. It is not political will, then, but moral reasoning, accessible to all, that is the foundation of our political system. And this kind of has to do with the 10 Commandments, right? Like in the Bible, it's that these things should be obvious from within us because they come from a moral standpoint of what is right for humanity. But then when you try to translate that into laws of what we're supposed to follow, as soon as you turn something into a law, people are looking to see how far they can push the boundaries. And this is why I believe that we do not need to set these things into words. We do not need to have rules. We do not need to have um, governance over our own people, because that is what skews it. Okay. And I know that that makes people panic inside because they think of like, um, what is it? Not The Grudge. There's a movie. Hang on. I think it's called The Purge, right? The Purge movies. It's like where everybody has to follow the laws all the time, except for like one night a year, they get to like purge society by getting all their devils out, you know? And, that's what I think that people think of when they think of no, if we didn't have a government, if just today we woke up and there was no government, there was no cops, there was no anything, I think everybody thinks it would be like the purge and it would just be complete chaos. And you're right, but it's because it has to create balance. Okay, we've been controlled for so long that our energy is like down here when we really want to have our own independence and our freedom to be able to do what feels right inside of us. Okay, so this purge mentality, it's not because that's who we are inside. It's a reflection of being suppressed for so many years. So you're going to have these peaks and valleys. Okay, it's like when summertime comes and crime increases because this wild animal that's been suppressed all winter long, or like in the school year, if you've been going to school all year long and then the summer comes and you're like, freedom. So everybody goes crazy. And that's because we don't maintain balance. So what I want you to understand is like, do not fear this land of no laws, okay? Because it needs to balance itself out. There are still tribes that exist in this world and they are just fine. They have their own power struggles within because we're all human. But I am going to help you to ease your fears of the unknown, because I'm going to bring it back to things that you've already been through and that you can already see the example of how it's true, okay? Our things don't get better because we just create more rules, okay? That's how things get worse. It's because then the people who follow the right thing to do because they follow their heart, they feel like they should be following all the rules. The people who don't like rules, they're just going to keep breaking them, okay? So it's just rules and passwords and all these things, they're not protecting the people who deserve to be protected most. Hang on, a train. Okay, the train is still going on, but as I've listened to these videos before, it doesn't really pick up on the microphone. So we're just going to keep going, and I am not going to interrupt myself anymore. Okay, I can break it down on another video. This is for me. This is how I am trying to learn how to self-edit and be more efficient with my time. All right, so I'm going to reread where we were just at. Appealing to all mankind. The Declaration's seminal passage opens with perhaps the most important line in the document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, grounded in reason. Self-evident truths invoke the long tradition of natural law, which holds that there is a higher law of right and wrong from which to derive human law and against which to criticize that law at any time. It is not political will, then, but moral reasoning accessible to all that is the foundation of our political system. But if reason is the foundation of the founders' vision, the method by which we justify our political order, liberty is its aim. Thus, the cardinal moral truths are these: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Let me just interrupt one quick time with this, because I think people think it's funny when they're talking about like how it's all written for men. And I want you to think about men and women outside of our modern construct of it. Okay. Men are supposed to protect. Okay. Period. Men are supposed to be the protectors. So if rights are given to men to protect and defend their family and care for them because they have the freedom to do so, then it's not that women's opinions don't matter. It's that then women can focus on being where they're meant to like function best, right? To care for the family. They don't need to be the ones out making the rules and protecting the family and like doing all the hard work. Men were built so well for that, okay? So if you give the rights to men and you give them like the freedom to do what they do best, then they don't get angry, okay? The reason why men are so angry and like lazy, if you want to call it that, it's because we took away their right to be able to protect and defend and honor their family through what they do best. Okay. So don't get all uppity about it saying that all men are created equal. It's like if all men are created equal, then all women get to enjoy that equality. Okay. Because they are with men who feel full and whole in themselves. If a man gets to feel equal, if they all get to feel equal power, then they just feel alive inside. Okay. They feel loving. That's what allows them to be vulnerable with their woman. And that then like the woman needs to honor that because that's what they want a woman for. Okay. They can have all their men friends. They don't want their men to provide this like place of comfort at the end of the day where they can just relax and be themselves. They want to like have their persona as to who they are with their man group, but they want to be completely vulnerable with their woman and not feel like the woman is going to criticize them. Okay. All right. Last time for we'll see. All right. We are all created equal, as defined by our natural rights. Thus, no one has rights superior to those of anyone else. Moreover, we are born with those rights. We do not get them from government. Indeed, whatever rights or powers government has come from us, okay. We do not get them from government. Indeed, whatever rights or powers government has come from us, from the consent of the governed. And our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness imply the right to live our best lives, or to live our lives as we wish, to pursue happiness as we think best by our own lights, provided only that we respect the equal rights of others to do the same, drawing by implication upon the common law tradition of liberty, property, and contract, its principles rooted in right reason. The founders thus outlined the moral foundations of a free society. Do you see how this is English and yet it's like it's difficult to read the cadence of it, right? Like the rhythm of how these words are supposed to be read because this is not common in how we speak to each other, right? So it's like even, even though I can see where the commas and the periods are and all these different signals to let me know how to read it, it's still very difficult to read. All right. Only then did they turn to government. We institute government, the Declaration says, to secure our rights, our natural rights, and the rights we create as we live our lives. But the powers that government may need to do that must be derived from our consent if they are to be just. Okay? Government is thus twice limited by its end, which any of us would have a right to pursue were there no government, and by its means, which require our consent. When it came time to draft a new constitution, the founders drew upon the principles they had outlined in the Declaration. Having recently overthrown oppressive British rule, they were not about to reimpose oppression on themselves, right? Accordingly, their basic task was to devise a government that would be strong enough to secure our rights against domestic and foreign oppression, yet not so powerful or extensive as to be oppressive itself. Toward that end, the document they drafted, once ratified 2 years later, authorized government and governmental powers, then checked and balanced those powers through a series of extraordinarily thoughtful measures. Okay. This is like the executive branch, the three branches of government. See, it's like that stuff is so distant in our minds because we learned it so long ago. I don't know, most people do not remember all that stuff unless they based their occupation in it. The preamble sets forth the basic principle of the document. We, the people, for the purposes listed, do ordain and establish this Constitution. All power, in short, comes from the people, but as a reflection of the principles of the Declaration, the power the people give to government to exercise on their behalf is strictly limited. Indeed, the very first sentence of Article 1 following the preamble implies as much. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress, That the people herein granted only limited legislative powers is made clear by the enumeration of those powers in Article 1, Section 8. And the point is reiterated as if for emphasis in the 10th Amendment, the final member of the Bill of Rights that was drafted in 1989, then added after ratification in 1791. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. Okay, so that's like federal government versus state or local government. Plainly, only certain powers were delegated or granted by the people. Those powers were then enumerated in the Constitution. The rest were reserved to the states or to the people, never having been granted to either level of government. To illustrate how enumeration limits power, consider the General Welfare Clause of Article 1, Section 8. Were the passage containing that clause to be read simply as authorizing Congress to tax and spend for the general welfare, as some read it today, Congress would have been granted all but unlimited power, and the enumeration of other powers would have been to no purpose. Thus, the passage must be read as permitting spending only for enumerated ends, and the clause restricts such spending to the general welfare only, not to the welfare of particular parties. Okay? General welfare, not just Democrats or Republicans. All right? Or like what my kids watch Hamilton a lot, so they remind me that the governmental parties were called like Democratic Republicans and Federalists, right? And that's so confusing. Okay. Similarly, the power given Congress to regulate commerce among the states could not have been a power to regulate anything that affects commerce, which in principle is everything, for that too would have made pointless any limits imposed by enumeration. It's so hard to understand the meaning of this as I'm reading it. Rather, the Commerce Clause was meant primarily to restrain state power, to ensure the free flow of goods and services among the states. Congress was given the power to regulate such commerce, to make it regular. Those limitations are reinforced by the Necessary and Proper Clause, which limits the means available to Congress to those that are necessary for executing enumerated powers. Without such means, the enumerated powers could not be executed and proper for a government dedicated to liberty. As their many writings make clear, the founders intended the doctrine of enumerated powers to be our principal defense against overweening government. If there were no power to do something, the government would have no authority to do it. But they provided other defenses as well. Thus, in addition to dividing power between the national and the state governments, leaving most power with the states or with the people, they separated powers among the three branches of the national government: legislative, executive, and judicial, then devised a series of checks and balances to further restrain these powers. Within the bounds of its enumerated powers, for example, Congress may enact legislation, but the president has the power to veto such legislation, which Congress may then override only by a supermajority vote. Likewise, in deciding cases or controversies before them, the courts may exercise the judicial power by reviewing the courts of the other two branches to ensure that they do not exceed the limits imposed by the Constitution. Power that was extended to state actions as well after ratification of the Civil War amendments. But the president and the Senate determine who shall sit on the federal courts. Again, the Bill of Rights was added in 1791 for greater caution, but because no such bill could list all of our rights, the Ninth Amendment states, "The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people." And of course, the people retain the power to elect their political officials, which was a final check on overweening power. The Declaration and the Constitution together address mankind's most basic political questions. Resting on a firm moral foundation, they articulate the first principles of political organization. Thus, they were meant to serve not simply the 18th century, but generations to come. which would face those same basic questions, whatever their particular circumstances, whatever their state of material progress, because the principles, I'm sorry, because the principles the founders articulated transcend both time and technology. They will serve us well as we move through the 21st century, if only we understand them correctly and apply them properly. In the end, however, no constitution can be self enforcing. Government officials must respect their oaths to uphold the Constitution, and we, the people, must be vigilant in seeing that they do. The founders drafted an extraordinarily thoughtful plan of government, but it is up to us, to each generation, to preserve and protect it for ourselves and for future generations. For the Constitution will live only if it is alive in the hearts and minds of the American people. That perhaps is the most enduring lesson of our experiment in ordered liberty. Now, do you think that you have time to investigate the Constitution and all that? I am going to end this video here because that was just the preface to the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to end it here and then we will continue on with the Declaration. Okay. I really want you to understand that in this world of like digital distractions and marketing and all of this stuff, it's like, even if it wasn't planned this way, don't you think it works out good for the government? So you don't have time to challenge them because you're too busy making money to pay bills, to pay off credit cards that they made it real easy for you to get, right? And then they like bailed out the banks when we had the recession back in 2008, 2009, and the auto industry. Girl, it's time. We got to take the power back. Here's train. All right, I love you. I'll see you in a minute.